Direct from Fort Meade, Maryland, this is DINFOS Live.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of DINFOS Live. I'm Chad McBean. I'll be your host. Today, we're going to be talking about visual storytelling. And I have two rock stars in the industry, instructors from across the road, Shane Bowler and Tommy Gilligan. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me today in studio. Let's go ahead and grab our seats. Before we get into the questions, let's do some quick introductions. Just tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do at the schoolhouse across the street.
My name's Shane Bowler. I'm an instructor over at DINFOS. I teach the intermediate photojournalism course. Come to the course with about 15 years experience, and so it's exciting to come in every day and teach students what I've learned in the industry. I've been there since about late 2019, so I'm coming up on 3 years.
Okay, very good. I appreciate you coming in. And Tommy, how about you?
My name's Tommy Gilligan. I've been teaching at DINFOS now for about 6 years. Before that and currently, I've been working for the wire services for about 15 years, covering news and sports. And it's really cool being able to not only stay in the industry and see how things are doing, but seeing how people are going about covering everything and bring that into the classroom the next morning. So it's a really fantastic opportunity.
Very good. Good balance between the two of you and a wealth of knowledge for sure. Well, thanks for coming in. And with us in studio, as always, Sergeant Ben Witten. He'll be taking your questions online. So if you have those questions, please send them in. That way we can get them. We'll answer those on air. It is live in the truest of sense. So, we will try to answer those first, and then I have questions, obviously, I'll ask too. That conversation will continue, so if we don't get to them here, I'm sure you guys will spend all of your weekend hours answering those questions that people might have in. Looking forward to that weekend. That's great. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. Let's go back, like history of storytelling, right? 30,000 BC, I mean, that goes back some time with the hieroglyphics and writing on the walls and telling stories of hunting. So the technology has changed, but the basic principle of storytelling has remained the same. We just have different equipment. So we're going to get into that a little bit. You both said you're IPC instructors, so tell me a little bit about what your focus is at IPC, and I guess what a student should expect.
Sure. For me, the things that I teach are videography, shooting video, as well as sound. Bringing sound to bear and using it to elevate a story. I also teach a lot of the technical, the editing process. But I also put a humongous emphasis on the pre-planning and the researching and the knowing your story before you go out and just hit record and start collecting your story.
Yep, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit for sure. We'll get definitely into the planning. What about you, Tommy? You're more on the photo side?
Yeah, I'm more on the photo, the tech side in terms of camera operations. It's not the ability of just being able to go out there and shoot something and saying, oh, this is really nice, but it's the instilling in the idea of the student that not only what are you shooting, but what are you trying to shoot and convey a message with that. So through a litany of different technical aspects, it's being able to use it fluently while you're on the job and not just by happenstance make that photo.
Sure. Of course, now the students have the ability to look at the back of the camera, so knowing what you want to do and then make the camera do it without cheating on the back. I learned on Nikon FM2, so I definitely can relate. Yeah. There was no cheating back then. So, but it's interesting, how we do that. Even a drone footage or whatever. I mean, you can look at it live, so you can see the shot, whereas those weren't things that were possible, 10, 15 years ago. So, so talk to me a little bit about, I guess, from the audience's perspective, right? What do they want to see now as technology changes? What do you think from what does the viewer of the products, what do they expect in a story?
I think sort of what most people are looking for, goes back as far as, the caveman drawings. They're looking for conflict, different kinds of conflict and resolutions. They're looking for answers to questions. They're looking for community. They're looking for inspiration. They're looking for, sometimes it's just entertainment. Sometimes it's just a laugh.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't think that's changed.
And all of that can tie into history.
Absolutely.
Because obviously it gets archived, just no different than the cave walls. Now it just goes to the archives. Anything to add to that, Tom?
I think the one thing people are looking for, and I'm always looking for as a viewer, is to be able to read something simply, and be able to understand it, and being able to gain that information without having to go to 6 different stops trying to find it.
No, good points. Good points. And there's a lot of competition out there. You want to talk a little bit about that? I guess you're competing for attention.
It is unbelievable. I mean, I often think and hope to convey to my students, they've been on the digital treadmill since they were kids, and byproduct of the way that we consume media, all the places we consume media, the phones, the tablets, the TV screens. Most every home has a TV. Most of them nowadays have 2 or 3. Which is different from maybe my parent, when my parents were my age.
Right.
So there's just information and stories coming at us all over the place, and they come quickly, and so our attention spans are shorter because of that. So I think that has sort of you have to understand that, and you have to consider that in the way we shape our stories. You want people to watch the stories you're telling, so you have to kind of remember, kind of what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of it comes down to the idea of, like, years ago, we could pull a retraction, right? We put something out there and it's bad information, we make that mistake. Today, we're moving so fast. And it doesn't matter if you have to go from practice to work, to pick up the kids, to all these different things. You see it once, it has to be factual. And so, like, I think that's a big thing of having that information out there immediately. So
yeah, that's a good point. And it really ties back to our first episode. We talked social media, but not only is it important to have it factual, but because now, even though if you put it out there, you can delete that post, but it has been screenshot. Mm-hmm. It lives forever and will be, changed into probably a false narrative. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And like I said, you're starting to see how these shows come together. Yeah. We talk about subjects and they all kind of make sense and tie into
it's the new archive.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes good, sometimes bad. So let's talk about, trends. What do you see in trends in storytelling? Has technology changed the trends, or do you think the viewers, the way they digest information, do you think that has changed trends?
I think on the viewer side, again, it's like the technology. We can just watch videos and read stories and look at content everywhere. Yeah. It's in our pocket. We carry it with us. As far as like on the production side and the crafting and shaping a story, I think a long time ago you had your audio guy, you had your videographer, you had your director, someone who's sitting there maybe conducting the interview. Somebody shooting videos, but now, the technology, even if you're using a standard DSLR, you can put a mic on it, you can put a light on it, you can carry it around. Everything's so compact and works so well together, and then the way you can just get all that media off and put it on your laptop and edit it in the car or edit it in a coffee shop and zip it up. It allows, speedy productions, don't need a whole crew anymore, and then you can edit that thing and beam it up to wherever you want it to go so quickly, and get your story, your message out, in the blink of an eye. I think that's where the technology has made it a game changer for both the audience and the creator.
Sure. Tommy, what do you think?
I think technology plays a lot of different realms, right? Depending on where we're working in. But the one thing technology has really allowed us to do is really show the imagery that is intended. So we have the ability now to go somewhere at 20,000 ISO and produce an image that can be seen and be storytelling. So it's understanding where this technology is going and being able to fundamentally use it into the traditional sense to make that quality, the content and the quality that much higher. So that's where I see it.
So as you guys are talking, I'm kind of thinking through, not just the technology, but the gear. Mm-hmm. If you think about like the gear, and not every base or unit or station shop, whatever you're at, not all of them are created equal, right? Some have huge budgets and they get it. They have quadcopters or whatever. Do you think the story, and we're going to get into the planning here in a minute, but do you think the story dictates what kind of visuals you're going to use? Like, are you going to use a time lapse? Are you going to use some aerials? Are you going to use, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, or emotion? in like sunsets or rain? Does that all go into it? Like, do you guys get into that? We didn't rehearse
Absolutely,
this, so you can take your time.
Yeah, I mean, the way, how are you going to show the thing you're wanting to show? Every frame, every photo, every video, every sound, everything we want to have intent. And one of the things is, like you said earlier, is like, if you're a storyteller, you're up against some heavy competition. So, are you going to go do a story about something, that somebody else has done already 10 times in the last couple months? So how are you going to show it differently? How are you going to make it different? How are you going to make it stand out, stand apart, maybe be better? And I think it might be a little all over the place, but with the technology and stuff, it's just so important to not, we're talking visuals covering a story. I hate the word B-roll. It just seems like, interchangeable and non-specific and, lacking intent, so I think we want our sound bites, we want our images, our video clips to have stopping power. And I do think that some of the technology, like a drone shot, it's got some instant stopping power.
Yeah.
But if you use it over and over, if you rely on it, the extraordinary suddenly becomes wildly ordinary. So intent, and use it purposefully. But again, we talk about it all the time. I think he and I are the same of the ilk that, you don't need the new toy. You don't need the new camera, the new anything. I've gone back and looked at stories from the 70s and 80s that still have, they're still powerful. And they were shooting on, some pretty old gear. If you know how to use your gear,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, having all these toys, having everything else, they're wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I would love personally to have 15 of the new Nikons, 15 of the new Sonys. But until we truly understand how to really use these toys, it's keeping it clean and simple. And then when we have that awesome drone shot, it is really impactful because it's once and it's there and it's exactly the way we want. It's not shaky. It's not bouncing around. So that, going back to the technology, the advancements have allowed us to get really cool stuff, but keep it simple and clean and show what it is instead of going with crazy pans that don't bring us anywhere.
Yeah, throwing everything at it and hoping for something instead, throw it all on the wall and see what sticks. No, that makes sense. So going back, to my original question of trending, I asked what the popular trends are. So I kind of am curious, where would a person go to see, like, what are there sites that you guys use to pull, or are there places you can go to find out what's hot and trendy right now, or or do you get audience feedback? And that's kind of a lengthy question, but
no, I think it kind of starts just being who we are, being immersed in the business. So first, I think where we start seeing things is where we go out and we're doing our shoots ourselves, and we're not just sitting back, and we're talking to people who are doing this every single day, every single hour. So with that, you have a baseline of maybe photographers or videographers or audio people that you really like. If you don't have that, go to your favorite social media site and look up the great news packages, the Washington Post, the Nat Geo, LA Times. Start looking to see where they're, that's what I'll do. I'll start looking to see what their photographers or videographers are doing and start going in deeper dives to see, okay, hold up, they tried this last night at the Olympics, and we'll go back to over the summer, and seeing all the amazing imagery they were doing about it, and seeing how different agencies cover the same idea. So for me, I normally go to, for example, Instagram, and then I'll backtrack, reverse engineer through the photographer to find out the other cool things that are happening in the world right now.
Oh, cool. You good with that?
Yeah, just, kind of looking around, hitting up YouTube, Vimeo, looking at your social media, looking what's popping, but just looking it through that, kind of filter of I see how they did that. I like the transitions. I like the shot sequences.
Yeah.
Just kind of using the basics and looking at it and like Tommy said, kind of deconstructing it and stuff like that. There's a million websites you can go to. I think Pixel Art is one I go to. I go to Creative Live and I can watch a lot of live features on storytellers and stuff like that, but there's so much it can get confusing.
Yeah.
But I really think it's just kind of keeping your eyes and your ears open and looking around and seeing what's popping, what people are reacting to.
So you both mentioned the how they did it, And I think that the one thing that we might have skipped just a little bit is why. Why did they do that? You know, so not only the technical aspect of how to get that shot, but why was that important to the story? So that's kind of what we're talking about here, which I think is pretty important. So tell me, is there? I want to know if there's like a formula that you go into, and we're kind of getting into the planning phase, which has been important. You know, I mean, it's important in PAG, it's important in, you know, all public affairs planning. But do you think there's a formula that's kind of a cookie cutter thing? When I think of this, I'm thinking more along the lines of like, does news have do you take a different approach for news, like timeliness, that kind of stuff, or do you tell it a different way than a feature?
I think at first it would probably depend on what medium we're looking at. Are we talking about the single image, or are we talking about a news package or a multimedia piece that extends to 3 minutes? So each product will take a different approach to it. So I think when you start doing an idea of packaging and what's the simplest way, what are you trying to convey in that message, right? You want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I think, you know, no matter what it is, if it's an image that you're trying to convey a story through, or a video, or a multimedia piece, or just a written piece, you know, I think, you know, you start with the basics. You know, you want your story to have beats. And the most simple beats are a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know, and after you're comfortable with that, sometimes it's not, you know, the beginning, hey, we start at the starting line and this is the journey to the finish line. Sometimes the story is the journey. So maybe you start with the end, and then the rest of your story is how we got to that end, you know, and stuff. So you can be creative, but I think it's really just about having a focus. The formula is having a focus, understanding your beats, and just being concise and clear in those beats, and not get lost in the sauce and create some meandering kind of thing, because once that starts, your audience is going to leave. You know, we're talking about competitive storytelling. They're going to leave your story and go check out the next one. You know, the formula, I don't know. It's different, you know. Like I said before, did 10 people already do this story? Did they have a formula? You don't want to follow that formula. You want to mix it up and make it unique and new. So think outside the box, but be clear and be straightforward with your audience. Don't create some Rubik's Cube where they're going to get lost, because once they're lost, they're gone. They're not coming back. Yep,
no, absolutely. So this is going to be more for the video side, because I'm going to talk about audio. How important is the sound? Is the audio that goes into a video package? How important is that?
It's so important, and I'm like still coming off my excitement. I don't want to say the word high. I did my audio lesson yesterday with our current students, and you just see their heads going, like buying into it. Audio is so important. Audio can be dialogue. You know, there's something to, you can have somebody talking on screen, but they could have be from Boston, or they could be from the South, and you hear that. It speaks volumes about character, just the sound of their voice. The audio can be sound effects. When we're out in places, there is a cacophony of sounds, a soundscape everywhere we are, whether it's a bowling alley, a beach. What are some of the other wonderful examples?
Cicada summers.
Yeah, cicada season in Maryland. There's a sound. And when you're putting up visuals and you're putting up, whether it's a still or a video, and you put those sounds that we all know and we can all relate to, it draws our audience into the story, gives them a sense of realism and dimension where they're in the story. They're not like on the other side of a camera lens and 10 feet to our subject. They're in it. It gives them a real relationship with the location and the scenario that, the backdrop of what your story is. So I think sound is wildly important. I could go on about it forever. Music, emotional cues, foreshadowing, if used properly, kind of keying in the audience to kind of like the mindset of your subject, using sounds. It's incredibly powerful.
Interesting. No, that's some good stuff.
I think the one thing as a photographer I take from sound is I look at a radio. Growing up listening to the music, you can listen to really good music and it paints a picture. But as soon as that static comes on, you change the channel.
That's a huge part of our story, or our course. A huge lesson we instill in the students early on is that your imagery can be a little off. I mean, we strive to, teach students how to create, super well composed and exposed shots, great imagery. But if your imagery is off, your audience will stay. Bad imagery but strong audio, they'll stay. Crystal clear, amazing shots, but bad audio, they're out. Audio really drives the story.
So, yeah, and you sum it up, it's just that idea, if you can listen to it, you can paint a picture in your head and you can fill all those holes. I don't care how amazing a photo is. If you're putting it in a package and that audio is awful, it's a game changer and people are swiping and going to the next thing.
Yeah, no, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very true across the board. So we've been chatting for a while. I want to check in with social media. So Sergeant Whitten, we got anything coming in over there question-wise?
We do got a couple of questions coming in. We got this one from Thomas Yates. He says, are there some mistakes or overused techniques that people will use in their visual storytelling?
There you go.
To me, there's this short list of what separates an amateur from a professional. We're not an amateur and amateur look to your videos to a professional. Wildly overused, pans, tilts, zooms, too much handheld video. Everybody thinks they can, not everybody, but a lot of people think they can handhold their camera and it'll look fine. It doesn't look very good, so we put an emphasis on put it on the sticks. Or, we also do teach them some tricks on how to really kind of, balance your camera and not make it jarring and shaky. Again, something as small as a shaky shot, it's jarring, boop, I'm out. The audience is gone, so we want to shoot cleanly.
I've been watching Friday Night Lights, and it drives me crazy. They're out of focus blur and the shaky camera, and I'm like, come on, man, just tell the story.
Yeah, I mean,
I know I'm supposed to be in the room with you.
You can do a rack focus and stuff like that, and they're great when they work, but if they don't work, you can't rely on it, you know? Really, I mean, if you ask any, describe, Mr. Bowler's lessons in one word, and I'm just emphasizing restraint. Don't go for all the bells and whistles and the whiz bang and
just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
You can,
exactly,
but you can do those things, but with intent. We teach them, when do you use a pan, and not just like zipping around the room, or the scene, but like I'm doing the pan because I want to start here and I want to end here, and when I end here, I'm showing the audience this thing. It has to have intent. If it's just it's not good.
Yeah.
I think one thing on the still side you see a lot is everyone will shoot super bokeh because they think extreme depth of fields are amazing. Well, all you're doing is isolating an item in that at that time. While that photo is super cool, what's it saying? So I think for that side of it goes across the ways. Just because you can do it, as you were saying, doesn't mean you should do it. Yeah. What actually helps the story, not take away from the story. And I think for young storytellers, that's the harder thing to figure out, that just because it's a super cool technique, I'm actually hurting the story doing that. So restraint is an awesome word.
You brought up a good point before we got started, and you were talking about wedding photography, and I immediately think sometimes you got to show the venue.
Yes.
It's not just the bride and groom. Sometimes you have to show the venue too. So that's where you need all that stuff in focus. Yeah. No, that's good. That's great points. Sergeant Whitten, we got any more?
We do have another. I just wanted to add my little 2 cents on the restraint thing. I remember I was watching a movie the other day. I think it was the first Thor movie, and half the shots were Dutch angles, so all it did was just give me a neck ache by the end of it. And that makes me think of that.
You just made me cry. I cried a little bit.
There you go.
But that being said, there's a place and a time and a message for using that Dutch angle. So use it strategically and purposefully. And then it matters. It matters to the audience. You're conveying something through this. Hopefully they're getting it. And it's, and it's extraordinary, moment.
Yeah. Good examples. I mean, that I think helps put perspective to, the viewers too. So, all right, what's our next one?
Next question is actually, are there any outdated techniques that you still see people use that, they were once the go-to way to go, but not anymore?
I think from the one thing I see on that is transitions and the way that people edit. I think there's a purpose probably with a lot of stuff that's traditional, and if you want to call it old school. But I think the way people are editing and cutting now, I think some of that has gone away. Not to make fun of the style, but Ken Burns, if you're just putting on and hitting auto and saying, hey, this is our piece, don't care what happens. Yeah, stuff like that needs to go away. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, something that I see that's pervasive out here in social media are these like YouTubers or streamers or these digital storytellers where they're just talking into a camera and it's like jump cut, jump cut, jump cut. You know, they don't take advantage of that second camera angle to cover the edit. They just edit, edit, edit. And I think that is a fast-paced, moving style of edit that just sort of speaks, it's testimony to like what I said is our shrinking attention span. We don't have time for the lungs and the breaths and the beats between sound bites. They just I struggle to follow it, but admittedly, it's out there, it's working, it's got viewership, people are into it.
Ultimately, it's changing how people digest media. You know what I mean? It's changing how we receive information, so that when you do have a well thought out and like a little more, breath in a story, people are like, "Come on, man, get to the point." So that hurts me a little bit, because sometimes, especially emotional stories, they need some time. They need some pauses. They need those moments where they're on the verge of starting, maybe it's emotional and they're about to, break down a little bit and they shed a tear. You need that pause. Don't cut that too short. So that's good advice. Good stuff. Any more Sergeant Whitten? Because I got a lot I can go into.
Well, we got a couple more.
All right, let's do one more and then I'll ask a couple.
All right. So we have, how important is photo and video documentation when trying to combat disinformation?
Ooh. I'm going to take pass on that one for one reason.
Honestly, we don't have to answer it here. That's one we can go on.
that's
Because
what
I
I
think
was
we might have more members of the team that can answer that one a little
Yeah.
better. You guys' focus is more on the visual and technical side of telling the story. That's more of a VI question, I think.
That's not exactly the realm that I work in so much anymore. So I would have to do some research to get back on that one.
All I could say is, as content gatherer, one of the most rewarding things for me in the industry has been if I'm doing the story of a subject, and I'm building a relationship with them and they're sharing that story with me and trusting me to tell their story. They know I've got buckets of information. I'm going to go up and slice and cut it up, to create, to present their story. And I think just as a photographer and a videographer, and storyteller, just respect that and cherish that they're trusting you and honor them. And the most rewarding thing is when I see somebody who's been a subject in a piece I've done say like, that was really great. That's it. I mean, I think you can just, follow the ethics, have your own ethics, be honest. And, one of the things with sound is you get a big, long 45-minute interview, you can cut that up and tell a whole bunch of different kinds of things. But be honest, represent your subject's message well.
So I guess that I would want to ask the person who asked the question, are we talking in terms of, when you say disinformation, are we talking in the normal PA world, or are we talking outside the PA world? Like, that's where I'm a little confused. So
it could be a whole episode.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Could be a
unfortunately,
series.
if you're watching, please elaborate on that. We'll try to follow up. Someone from the team will follow up on that one. So, I mean, we don't have to do it all right here.
Sure.
So let me get back into just a little bit. So all stories and all scenes are not created equal, right? So if you show up and you're given a story to cover, you've planned it out, and then you get there and it's quite different. And I know this happened to me a lot because you got a vision of what you think needs to be told, and you get there and it's not that situation at all. How do you enhance that story? How do you make something out of what might not be there?
I have a great story. Be honest. We had a student who went out last iteration to do an event piece. And they're basically going out to cover an event and tell us, hey, what this event is about, what people are going to do. And then we talk to somebody at the event and talk about, hey, this is great. I'm enjoying myself because blank. It was a dog adoption event. Yeah. And he went there to the event and there was nobody there. And apparently the event coordinators were horrible people. And they didn't have any vendors. They hadn't, really kind of gotten the word out, and they weren't kind. And so he called us and was just like, oh my God, there's nobody here, there's nothing to shoot, there's nobody to interview. And I was like, well, it sounds like you need to do a story on the world's most boring dog event. Like own it. Get out there and like engage the one vendor who's trying to sell ice cream and just be like, yeah, this is
Don't make it. It's something it's not.
Not working. And so, I'm not saying every situation is like that, but get creative. Like if the story that you were looking for isn't there, that doesn't mean there's no story there. So maybe if it's not a story about a massive crowd, maybe that's that one person that turned out. What brought you out? You can just shoot smaller, ask smaller. You can turn it into something.
I think the first step is take a deep breath and just kind of reassess where you're at, because you walk in and it's like, okay, well, it's supposed to be sunny today. Well, it's raining. Okay, well, you still have to cover the story. So how are you going to do that? Right. And when you take that deep breath and sit back and realize what's going on and take that all in, then you can make some intelligent decisions on how to regroup on that. So that, I think, is the biggest thing, is readjusting and going to your experiences of what you shot previously to adapt to what's happening right now.
Okay. So a lot of stories are, what we call must runs. They're forced down, they're things that are come up, but I'm assuming run sheet meetings still happen out there. People sit down, and they come up with their own ideas. Where do you recommend people go for those? I mean, we had the ability to go out and build relationships, with units and people, and then foster those. You had your beats and all that. But now I'm kind of tying in the COVID situation, with restrictions and virtual environments and stuff like that. With all that said, where do you think people can go? I know I made this a deep one. Where do you think people can go to find those good or great stories?
I mean, to me, it's just about, it's this lost art. Like you said, this COVID has been going on for a long time, but it's about re-engaging the world and just going out there and being in it and experiencing it and looking around and seeing what's going on. Being safe, but going out and talking to people and, start, having relationships and, just kind of people watching, just walk through the city, just look around. I think there's inspiration everywhere. There's great stories. One of the things we try to impress upon our students early on is when they arrive here, from all over the world, they think they have to go to Baltimore or DC to find an excellent story. Stories are in the city, and it's like, not a chance. I mean, there are, but you're going to drive past 10,000 amazing stories on the way there, and you're going to put a little bit more, mileage on the car in the process. We've had great students. We've had students find stories in the detachment, find stories in the hotel that they're staying at while they're here. It's just because they're coming and going and they're seeing people and they start talking and they start learning about, that stranger down at the front desk, or, we had a student once that stopped a maintenance man in the hallway and said, like, she'd been traveling the whole, DMV looking for a story, and she was striking out, and she finally stopped this guy in the hallway and said, what is your story? And his initial reaction was like, what? Oh, I don't know. I don't have a story. And she just kept pressing him. And it turned out he did. He had a pretty incredible story, very touching story, and arguably like her best story in the course. So very stories cool. are everywhere. You just, be open, be sensitive, to find them.
And I think if you're fortunate enough to be able to go out and find your own stories, and it's not being forced down to you, what do you care about? If you care about something, you're going out and looking for something, go look for stories about things you care about, things that you're interested in. If you do not like digging ditches, and this is a personal story, don't go do a story on digging ditches, because it's going to show that you don't care about your work. If you're really into fitness and you're really into all those different aspects, it's going to show in your work. So those are the first couple of things. Like if you have the ability to pick a story, find something you really enjoy doing or something you really want to learn about, because that way you're going to devote all your information to those little details of why is something that way.
Yeah. So we do have one more social media question. I want to ask just one more, just because it kind of ties back to something we were talking about a little bit ago, because of all the, the competition in stories and media and just everything, life. How do you recommend that a person can get their story to stick out in all that noise? How do you get it to rise above? And
It's tough, with the whole internet and the web and the algorithms we were talking about, earlier. There's just no way to get all the data, So and whatever the algorithm is today, right now, in 15 seconds, it's going to be different, So I think what you can control is just the quality of your story, and just strive to tell a good story. One thing, first thing they used to say, I think you have like 10 to 15 minutes to hook in your 10 to 15 seconds, I'm sorry, to hook your audience in. I don't think you have that long anymore. You have like 3 to 5 seconds. So, impress them from the get-go, and then immediately tell them the focus, tell them the question that you're going to answer, and every single thing, every soundbite, every image, moving or still, hang that off that promise. Stories need to be focused. We don't like to just sit around and hang out and meandering stories anymore. We want to get to the point. We're an instant gratification kind of society and stuff like that. So promise me what you're going to tell me and start telling it to me. So I think that's how you can tell a strong story that can rise. It can be the cream. If, like I said, if you're the 11th person to tell that story, hopefully yours will resonate with people more, get the most shares, the likes, the retweets. I think that's where stories come to life, is when you start that, process.
You start seeing those results.
Think of the word,
Yeah. No. Tommy, you ready to go?
I think it's just fine. Some days you can do the same exact thing, shoot the same exact whatever, and nothing moves. Then you just find something that's unique. And by putting out the unique, then it starts getting some run. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It's just something a little bit different than anyone else and leading someone in. We're all different. So we should all have a different start to our piece and kick it out that way so people can see it. If I'm trying to do a story, I don't want to do it like Chad just did his story. I want to see some of the stuff that you just did and bring that into mine
And put your twist.
and put your twist on it. And hopefully your twist is enough to get those numbers. If not, like if you're in your shop in a smaller shop, pair up with if you're a carrier, call Big Navy and say, I have this story we're ready to pitch. Can we get your help? Can you help us push that? So again, that comes down to knowing people and working through the different chains of command to help you get your story out. Because the beauty of this, the military's got a built-in audience. And if it's good content, people are going to see it because they're dying for it.
Yeah, good point. So let's kick over to social media. I know we've got at least one.
Yeah, we got one question that came in.
Lay it on us.
John would like to know, aside from just shooting more, what advice would you give to some of the newer PA people, to hone their craft in respect to storytelling and being intentional with their imagery?
So I think the first thing I would look at is get out of your fishbowl. And what I mean by your fishbowl, if you're only looking at what people in your office are doing, you're probably doing it wrong. If you're just looking at what people are doing in the military, there might be a better way to do it, because the people who are doing it, who are civilian counterparts, there's so much other work that's fantastic. They're doing great work every single day. So if we're looking at great work and we're trying to pull that in and we see it, then we start trying to shoot that way. So it's educating ourselves what great art is, then going out and practicing it. And it's a really great point. What John said was, don't just go out and shoot. Go out and shoot with an intent, with an idea of something that you want. So when we start viewing all this great imagery, hopefully that will transcend to us creating great imagery as well.
Does that transcend in the video world?
Yeah,
as well?
I think, just, look around, learn things, from, all the work around us, look for inspiration where you can find it. And after a while, be confident, and, your style will emerge. And, I have a big, long story, but I'm not going to tell it. But I tell our students, 50 stories to really start to get a sense of, what's working. It takes a little while to develop your style and to, get confident. And also, there's something else that just completely slipped my mind. Just trust in the process. Be prepared. Do your research. know the story you're going out to tell. Just be as prepared as possible. Sometimes we have more time to do research and sometimes we have less, but I can't emphasize enough how much just doing a little research, a little Google on your subject or industry or whatever you're going to do the story on, how far a little bit of research can take you when you hit record and start working on your stories.
Makes sense. So we talked a little bit about before, we went on air and we were talking about the importance of commander's intent, like who is the commander? What do you think is more important, the commander's intent or focusing on something that's going to be so powerful that you can submit and win awards? Is there a balance there, or do you push one aside, or what?
Yeah, I think you push shooting for awards aside 100%. If you're out shooting for awards, you're not shooting for what your job is. That will come with great imagery. Right. Being in great places, having great, and when I mean great, interesting backgrounds and interesting things happen, awards will come from that. If you're looking for that, you're going to miss so many great moments. So that's my thought behind it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I do want to mention, though, since I run the awards program.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the full-time gig.
Well, hey.
So once
like
you get those, hey, thanks. Once you get those phenomenal shots, just look at the nomination guidance and make sure that your products fit. But you're right. If you shoot with intent and you shoot amazing stuff, then you just have to make sure, like B-roll, it's within the time constraint. So we'll just kind of throw that out there for those. Because I do know acknowledging those who excel in our field is very important. And that's one way we can get back and just recognize, like, hey, this was amazing, and here's an award for it. So don't shoot for it, but it will come. Yes. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first and foremost, like I mentioned earlier, honoring our subject's story, valuing that trust that they've given you and then turning that around and giving a good product and representing them well. But then there's nothing wrong with, shooting for, visual, excellence. So when you can bring both together, I think that's award winning.
Yep, perfect. Good point. Okay, Sergeant Whitten, how we doing? Any more over there? I can keep going.
We got one more.
Okay.
We have Livingston asks, can you speak to the importance of editing and sequencing a photo story to shape the narrative?
That's perfect with our commander's intent.
So in terms of photo story, I guess I would probably want to know a little bit more what they mean by the word photo story, because those definitions are different everywhere you're at.
Sure.
In regards to a traditional photo story, a key photo with supporting factors involved in that, does the supporting factors support the main photo? And if they don't, why is it in there? And that's the first thing. Every part of a photo, even if it's a photo story, if it's not adding to that story, why is it there? If it's taking away from it, remove it. So that's the first process I would start looking for. Is that photo story that we're talking about have a key photo? And once you find that key photo, that key focus, whatever you want to use for that terminology, you build upon that. And again, it comes down to always looking when you're shooting, not just shooting wide, medium, tight, but giving yourself options. If it looks really cool right here, what does it look 1 degree to the left? What does it look 1 degree to the right? And by shooting those type of things, you're going to give yourself options to have a better photo story.
Same with video?
Yeah, I think so. I think, we want our images to, constantly be advancing the story, teaching, adding something new, if whether small, medium, or large, constantly be showing it to us. And then, again, I think in video sequencing, one of the things is like, we don't want to show this bonsai tree for a 15-second shot. So, I will steal from the shot variety and, go in tight, go in wide, pull out wide and show these cool gentlemen sitting around this bonsai tree. So shot variety keeps us engaged. And so, when I think sequences, that's what I think, just kind of shooting. I don't want a different shot of 3 different trees, but let's show the same tree, but just keep moving around, moving in and out. And, and as we move around this tree, we're revealing more about what's going on around it.
Right.
I mean, you also can look at it as if you're writing, in writing as well, because any story, if you have the same word in a sentence multiple times, one, it can be removed. Two, it doesn't make any sense. So why would we have a similar shot back to back in the story? So that's a way to look at it as well, is do we really need that is? Is that the important in this sentence? If it's not, let's remove it and tell unique, compelling shots without having a word that's not necessarily needed.
Makes sense. It's a perfect transition. It's talking about words. How important, I guess, do you feel that the writing is to the storytelling process? And I know you're the subject matter expert, I guess, in the truest sense, is back at the schoolhouse. But if you wouldn't mind elaborating, like how the words that accompany the photo or video, how important are those?
No, I mean, the most common thing, is the captioning. One, it's giving, sort of meaning and explaining, what's going on in the image. It tells us, all the 5 W's, and then if you go, and expand into that second line, it can give you some real backstory and some real kind of hidden gem. Kind of, I call them Blu-ray extras. And it can really, elevate what you're seeing in the image. So as far as captioning, as far as the multimedia pieces that we put together and the features, all of our students do a video, they do a photo gallery, they do a written feature, but then they all combine it all into one, what we call a Spark page. And there are things that you can do with a photo that you can't do anywhere else. There are things that a video does, but there's some wildly powerful things you can do with words. We talked earlier about, in a photo we can show a subject. In a video we can show the action of the subject. But in the words we can get into the subject's mind and really, kind of explore their thoughts, their motives, their inner being. And so words are powerful in that way. And then, just being, descriptive, and really kind of giving the essence of things. It's hard to tell you in a photo or in a video what something tastes like. What's the temperature of the room, in words, right there. You can get right to it.
Yeah. You had mentioned reading a book. It was the difference between reading a book and watching a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of people enjoy the book more because it's more descriptive.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. Tell me what.
I think there's just some stories are better for the written format. That doesn't mean a visual story can't be done with it, but being able to package the two. I mean, when you start getting into history, well, we don't want to just always use courtesy footage. We don't always want to do these reenactment type things. So some stories just lend to that, and some stories are fantastic through the written word that a visual story can never touch. So,
good news is with the MCF graduates, I mean, they're built to do it all now. I mean, really, so they should be able to write, choose some video, do some, and they are that one person putting all that together, and that goes way back to what we were just talking, what is the timeline and all that, and if it's one person, and you get it now, that's part of your planning. Takes me to what I think is going to be my last question. We're out of social media questions, but I really want to talk about the planning process. How important is that planning piece to the overall story?
So I'm going to let you run with this because this is your baby, but there's one thing I want to put onto this. Learn to Google. And the first place before any story that we start should be at our keyboard and just diving into what have people done, what is the information about it, and then I'm going to let you take this because this is your baby.
It's funny because Googling, I think, is a life skill in 2021 that you need. Going into 2022, if you don't know how to Google something at this point, I don't know how you'll function in.
Isn't it a verb, in the dictionary now, like Googling?
Yeah.
But interesting thing why you bring that up about it should be something we should all do. When we look at technology now and almost everything we're doing is app-based. Well, how many times do we actually sit down and Google something on a desktop computer? So for us, sometimes, while we all find it extraordinarily valuable, it's something we have to actually teach at times of okay, just putting a word in Google doesn't mean you're going to get your set result. Sorry to go off topic on that, but it's amazing. It's a skill set that I think has been lost a little bit.
Yep.
So for me, planning is paramount. It's the first step to a successful story. And if you skip it, you've just really lowered the bar. For me, I try to impress upon the students, okay, I want to go do a story on a cookie maker. Someone that makes fascinating cookies. Okay, well, what's going on in the cookie industry? If you Googled it and researched it, you'd find out that, the world is heading towards a chocolate shortage. We are consuming chocolate faster than they can grow the cocoa bean, and so if you went and sat down with your cookie maker to ask them a question, and one of your questions is like, how will the chocolate shortage affect your industry, your business? They're going to go, wow, you cared enough to research and find out about my business. Yeah. You showed me you care, now I care, and now you've got my buy-in, you've got my commitment. And they're going to give you, a little bit of a better effort, but then also it allows you, by doing the research, it allows you to kind of write your, questions, better, more pointedly, and just, not tell some surface story. You can add some depth and complexity. You can sort of have an idea of the direction of your follow-up question. If they don't give you, if they answer a question, but there's some other information that you want, because of your research that you can dig a little deeper. So you reshape your question and you dig a little deeper. But first and foremost, to me, preparation is about showing your subject that you care and getting their buy-in, and you've committed to them and their story, and they're going to repay that with their commitment to you and your project. But then I also think good research and finding out everything you can about your story and getting your focus and getting your questions right means a shorter time actually in production. And then an efficient, focused production, and you collect all your media, and then you come back and it just falls almost in place and in order, and you can almost start polishing your edit from that point. You're not trying to extrapolate 3 minutes of story out of 90 minutes of footage. Yep. So I think that research is the most important step, and if it's done right, it leads to a very efficient and focused and excellent production and post-production.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, I think I've asked everything that hopefully I got to all the subjects that, the topics or whatever that you think is important in this. I appreciate you coming in today. We're not really on a timeline, but I think we've kind of exhausted, the information we can pass today. Remember, the conversation will go on, as I mentioned before. We'll go online and answer questions afterwards. So with that, I do have some administrative, comments and stuff we got to cover afterwards, but thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it so much. Sergeant Whitten, thanks for taking those questions online. Folks, remember, DINFOS is accepting nominations for the Hall of Fame, the class of 2021. So this is the last month, and the last day for that is September 30th. So go to the link that you see right there, get online, nominate somebody that you think is deserving of that honor. Next month's episode, we're going to be talking on October 27th. That's when we're going to meet to talk with the media literacy folks, or we're going to talk about media literacy. With the communication strategy officers from Headquarters Marine Corps, we'll have them come in and join us here in studio, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Folks, that's our show for today. We'll see you back here next month with the guys from the Marine Corps. Take care.